Hi, everybody. Welcome to Women Making Big Sales. This is Melinda Chan. Today, we're going to be talking about communication and networking. So basically, the essential part of sales, because we all know sales is all about communication with your clients, talking to your clients, understand their priorities, and making that connection. And I know I've talked a lot about it, but I figure that this time I'm going to bring somebody with a little bit different perspectives. The first time I met her, it was during her podcast, and I was impressed by how well spoken she was. And she talked a lot about networking, and she got a great experience building local communities and really connecting women locally and online as well. So I figure, I'll just pick her brain and let her share her expertise with us and different perspectives. And I hope that inspire you and improve or try different communication styles for your business and for your clients. So, Erica, hi, welcome to Women Making Big Sales.
Hi, Melinda. How are you? Thank you so much for having me on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you about it today. So, Erica, she is the business and breakthrough coach, and she's been in this business for a long time, and she has a great following locally and online. But, why don't you tell the audience what you have been up to? And yeah.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you again for having me on today's program. And I actually harken back to the days when I first started in sales in the corporate retail space many moons ago. And my dream job at the time when I first started in the retail world was to work behind the Clinique cosmetic counter. Flash forward today, I am far away from the Clinique cosmetic counter, but those communication tips that I learned early on helped me build relationships in the community at large. And now with what I do as a breakthrough coach and really helping business owners understand the language of sales and connecting with the right resources in order to grow.
Wonderful. So let's go straight into the topic of communication. A lot of people, especially experienced professionals or entrepreneurs, we know the basic of communication. Communication with our clients, communication with our colleagues, or our service providers. So sometimes we feel that, hey, I'm a pretty good communicator, and I can definitely, communicate the goals or what I'm trying to say relatively well. But the challenge usually comes when it comes to communicate selling. And of course, this is about sales or selling your unique value proposition or really asking or talking to people with a purpose. Basically, we're hoping that they will work with us and asking for favors or business introductions. Do you see a little bit difference in terms of communications when it comes to sales?
Well, I think that what catches people off guard is I think that there's a sequence of communication that has to occur, right? Because in the sales process, like I always equate it to dating. And Melinda, you and I have actually had maybe a similar conversation where, if you meet somebody for the first time, you're not necessarily proposing marriage. So in the sales situation, when we're initially reaching out to prospects, that prospect, although they might be interested in what you have to sell, they might not necessarily be warmed up to the idea to utilize you or choose you as that service provider or that product provider. So we have to be able to understand exactly what the client needs. And there's a sequence, and we can probably dig a little deeper into that sequencing, but it really is truly about building the relationship first and foremost. And I think that where I have noticed sales professionals feeling discouraged or frustrated is it's almost like they go in for the kill right away. It's almost like they go in and attack that sale right away. And we almost, especially in today's society where social media is involved and there's a lot of quote unquote competition, we've got to be mindful of the relationship first. And of course, we're going to dig a little deeper, I'm sure. I know you've got some really fascinating questions today, so I'm sure we'll dig really deep into this today.
Yeah, I think that's really important to really understand the sales process and really understand where you are in terms of the relationship. I think at the beginning, especially when we talk about women, it's easy to build that initial relationship. You know, we're always great. Most of us are naturally good listener. Most of us know the importance of building the community and building that relationship to begin with. But I usually find that there's a huge mental block when they feel like they're going to start selling. They're going to start sounding probably slightly pushy, or they're going to start to follow up. Have you noticed that with a lot of I mean, sometimes women, but I think it happens with men or women in general.
Hmm. Yeah, I think what's interesting is, especially in the service-based industry, like when we have a product, like like my cell phone, like I mean, it's much easier to sell a product that we can touch and
Yeah.
feel and experience, right? But when we're service providers, that there's no tangible like product that we can hold in our hand. So sometimes positioning our value points. I love what you said, the unique selling proposition earlier. Building a relationship or rapport with a client, sometimes it's going to take us 5 to 12 touches in order
Yeah.
for us to really make any traction with that person. And what's interesting is you might not get the sale from that person. You actually might get that sale from like that person indirectly because they have a network where they've introduced you to people. But I
Hmm.
think what troubles people with like feeling like not as confident to talk about pricing or asking for the sale is because they haven't taken that time to build that relationship, ask enough questions. I find that when I ask questions, my clients automatically come to their own conclusion because I'm almost treating them like they're like I'm Oprah and they're on my, or like Ellen today. I guess Ellen has a show. So it's almost like interviewing them on my show, and I'm
Hmm.
getting to the root of what they need the most help with.
Hmm.
And then I can let them know that I have a solution for that. And then, of course, that doesn't sound so pushy. It actually positions me from a place of strength. And it's more liberating when you can actually ask those questions and deliver what the client needs on a silver platter that way.
So when you sell, because I find that extremely fascinating, because even myself, I often tell my client a lot of times when I'm trying to sell, it ends up being in terms of closing the sales, most of the time my clients would be telling me, how can we work with each other? And that
Mm-hmm.
is usually the cue that, hey, this client is ready to talk business. And the importance is taking them through that journey so that they recognize, okay, now it's time to talk business. And it becomes a really natural transition rather than, oh my God, when am I going to say that words? Do you want to buy from me? Can we, how can we work with each other? Here's the pricing. Do you prepare ahead of time, or do you have any scripts written down when it comes to communication, or you just kind of, how do you prepare for it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think it varies depending on the scenario, right? I think first and foremost, I think there's always that opening script, right? Especially when you're meeting somebody for the first time. And if we have time, we can actually go through some of those scenarios. But I think when it gets right down to like when we might have had like that, I think I hearken it to like when I actually have a quote unquote discovery call with the client. So that initial discovery call for me is just an opportunity to learn where they're at. I give them bonus assignments based on what I'm hearing and some things to be thinking about. And it's actually like like if you will, like almost like a finish line or like a checkpoint for me to know if they're going to be a good client for me. Because as
Yeah.
much as they're interviewing me, I want to interview them as well and understand, especially in the coaching space, it's so personal that
Mm-hmm.
they're going to be a good fit for me too. But when it gets to that point of so after, let's say I have that discovery call, I give them bonus assignments. We have another follow up call to ensure that they've done the work. Now, when they've done the work, I'm usually doing a little bit more coaching. And then when I get to that point of offering some sort of, like offer, I don't actually ask them. They're usually asking me, well, what does this look like? If they're struggling with that, I usually will say these words. Would you like to know what it would look like to continue the conversation? So that right away affirms to them that like, well, yeah, of course, because I've just given them two opportunities to learn about my process, and they don't feel like I'm cramming it down their throat. I'm asking them, would you like to know how we can continue the conversation? When they do, I then say to them, okay, well, then two options. that will work based on your scenario. Like it's not based on my agenda.
Definitely
It's
love
based
it.
on
Love it.
it's
Yeah.
based on theirs, right? So we'll base off of the feedback that you've given me and where your needs are. These are the two options that I see best. And so then, I mean, I have those two options in my back pocket. It's not like I pulled them out of thin air. I know where they're going to go. I explain those two options without even talking about price,
Mm-hmm.
letting them get excited about it. And then once they can see themselves in either one of those options, that's when we start discussing pricing. So it's just about leading them and asking them enough questions to get them to come to their own conclusion. I hope that answered your question, Melinda, because I feel like I went run around in circles on that a little bit, but I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. There are a couple of points that I absolutely love in terms of this process. And the first thing is that you always need to let your clients come to that conclusion. Because if the client has not come to that conclusion, it's your time, it's your job to start to really understand, hey, where they're at. And the fact that you said, hey, and what was the script you used? Do you want to know the next, what was the script you used again?
Yeah, would you like to know how we can continue the conversation?
Yes, and I love the fact that you use the we because it becomes a business partnership rather than buyer and seller relationship. And I think that's the thing that people struggle the most. They continue to think that this is a buyer and seller relationship, and it becomes a really conflicted relationship because the buyer obviously say that I don't really want to buy from you, and the seller said I've got something to sell. But the moment you put the two together in terms of we, then you start to have that common objective. So I absolutely love it. And but my question is that if, in terms of once they get to that stage, do you have a preparation stage to take them to that stage where they feel that, hey, it's time that we can talk business? Do you have, from the beginning to, how do you maintain that sales conversation? I think that's a lot of people's question because people are always busy. So, for example, if you meet with a person at a networking event, they might say, hey, Erica's great. I really enjoy speaking with her. But once you get home, then, there's kids crying, there's dinner to prepare, the dogs, the cats. Do you have a way to maintain that sales relationship or that conversation?
Yeah, that's a great question, Melinda. So I think what it all boils down to is that I always assume that the person that I'm building a relationship with does not need my services at all. Because I guess like that right away, if I'm going to assume that especially in the coaching space, it's a very personal space to be in, right? I mean, like we never want to assume that because coaching, I think for a lot of people has this interesting connotation, like they think that it's a bad thing. They don't necessarily see it as a very good thing. And anytime we can take our skills to that next level, it's always a wonderful thing. But it can be very confrontational if I say, oh, well, we should totally talk because I think you could use me. No, no, no. So I think what's interesting is when we meet people at a networking event and then we leave the energy of that networking event, it is always a good idea. Like I always will plan networking events on, if I'm going to do them, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And the reason being is because my next day, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, my first thing that I've got to do is follow up with the people that I met the day before. Now, if you're going to a networking event and you're like anticipating you're going to meet 100 people, it's virtually impossible to follow up with 100 people that day. So
No.
be strategic. Understand that when you go to a networking event, it's okay if you only walk out of there with 3 business cards because that's 3 relationships that you can focus on building and understand, like how you can continue to build the relationships. But if you're going to go to a networking event, always build the very next day, the first thing in the morning, an opportunity to circle back with that person. Hey, it was nice meeting you at this event. I'm looking forward to learning more about you and your current areas of focus and how I can support you. It's
Mm-hmm.
never about me like saying, oh, well, you want to connect for a cup of coffee so I can tell you how awesome I am. It's not that way at all. It's really about understanding their needs and how I can support them.
And if you find somebody with great potential at a networking event, because now we're talking about networking, but I
Yep.
know that you've got tons of experience with networking too. So I also like to pick your brain. If you find a really great prospect, do you find a way to really have that strong call to action to connect with this person? Because a lot of times, yeah, we send email to say, or messages, LinkedIn messages say, let's keep in touch. But if you find one that's, that could be a great prospect for you, what do you do to really generate lots of interest or momentum in that relationship?
Again, I think it circles back to what I had said earlier. I don't ever assume that that person's a client for me. I always
Really?
assume I don't. I
Wow.
always
Wow.
assume that I can be of service. There's some way I can connect the dots. But I never want to assume that that person is a potential client for me. I want to get them to come to that conclusion. So part of that relationship building process for me is to, and I'll say it again because I think it's important to say this script. How can I support you in your current areas of focus? If you can get used to anybody that's listening to this or watching this, if you can get used to saying that phrase, will serve you in so many capacities because that person doesn't feel threatened. That person feels like it's an invitation for them to talk about themselves and talk about what they might need help with.
Mm-hmm.
And as you continue to build that relationship, I actually there's another peer that I know, and it's very brilliant. He was actually the one that taught me this. But he's in the insurance space, and he's never asked for a single bit of business. He's always been, how can I be of service? How can I support you in your areas of focus? And he does it enough times. Now, you don't have to be a slave to it. I mean, you really want to be strategic about it, but you do want to offer that out there and just go do it. If that person is asking you, well, I really need a connection here. If you can make the introduction or the connection for collaboration or partnership, make the introduction, be of service. And he's done that enough where people are like, well, gosh, what can I do for you? And then he's like, well, while you're asking about it, and now it opens up the door for him to say, well, this is what I'm working on. This is my current areas of focus. And it's been amazing how he's been able to, interact with a lot of sales because he's had that service first mindset. Does that
Mm-hmm.
make sense?
Yeah, I love the fact that it's all about service and serving your clients. I mean, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter which industry you are. It could be in insurance, and I've sold in different industries, education programs, or even now consumer goods. Even if you're selling a product, and this is really for a lot of people who owns product, even if you're trying to sell to big retailers or to merchants, it is still about that service. It is still the added value you provide. It's never just about what you're selling itself. It's the whole package. It's your sincere desire to serve and that extra thing about the industry, about the marketing activity you'll provide or the customer service you provide. So I love that sentence. It is really essentially, regardless of what you're selling, that is still the most powerful way to approach your clients.
Yeah, and that's your unique selling proposition, right?
Yeah,
Because like how many people right now are not doing that? Like
it's
I
amazing.
know Melinda, you and I could probably talk all day about people in our industry respectively that are simply going in for the jugular. They're not thinking about they're going for the instant win and they're not thinking about the long-term gain. But if we can position ourselves from a place of asking like contributing, collaborating, being of service, that makes us stand out because there isn't a whole lot of people doing that right now. So it really elevates your game and positions you from a place of strength.
Yeah, I think it's funny. I mean, these days in our, online marketing world, there's so much emphasis on automation, right? But I actually heard a great sentence. You don't want your marketing automation becomes a spam automation. And that's what happens when you don't spend enough time to really understand your client's pain or to really trying to serve and just end up doing lots of automation, but without that sincere desire to serve a client. And that's how most people stand out. I mean, regardless what kind of people you sell, what kind of industry you're in, winning sales agents, it's all about serving. And like you said, you're a peer insurance agent, and that's how he gets lots of sales.
Yep, absolutely. And it's definitely a little more freeing too because it doesn't put that pressure on you to have to be slimy or be like spammy. You're just like you're putting yourself out there in a pretty vulnerable way, but it ends up coming back in a huge way. It takes a little longer to build that rapport, but it does come back in a huge way for sure.
Yeah. How do you, I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs that are looking for big sales, there is that pressure. Even though we can talk about the fact that, hey, it's fine, we should serve our clients, but in reality, a lot of them, there's still that pressure that about making the sales, especially for people who are just starting up their business, and there's
Mhm.
that desire to close their first business client. Do you have any suggestions for them to overcome that pressure to sell?
Yeah, you know what? Like, I think, well, I don't think I know. I should stop saying I think so much. But, I really feel it in my heart of hearts that in a lot of ways, when we are doing activity, when we're focusing on connecting with people genuinely, like in time, like, I think what trips people up is that they think, okay, I've got to hit a specific quota and that represents X amount of sales, right? Because let's just pretend that they've got, I mean, we're just going to talk like really like just generic numbers here,
Yeah.
but let's say they've got to sell $10,000 a week.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, you divide that into 5 weeks, you do the math, that's $2,000 a day. Well, so what if you sell a $500 widget or a $500 service? That's 4 sales a day, right? So they think about connecting with, okay, I've got to get 4 sales, but they might only talk to 4 people. So we've got to start thinking about like, who are we truly talking with? How are we opening up those conversations? Are we looking for clients or are we looking at strategic partnerships? Now, I don't know about y'all, but I would rather talk to 5 people that were already talking to my ideal clients instead of trying to talk to 100 of my ideal clients. There's a lot of, you do the math, there's a lot less work involved with really building relationships with people that are already talking to your clients. So think about your industry. Think about the 5 like industries that would already be talking to your existing clients, those big fish, if you will, those
Yeah.
big clients.
Yeah.
Think about them and build the rapport with those people first because they already have the relationship with the client that you're thinking about, right?
Yeah.
You don't have that relationship yet, but if you can become best friends with those people that are already talking to the big fish, you're more likely to retain that business as opposed to going out there trying to find them yourself. So that's one aspect of it.
Love it. Yeah.
um, yeah, I think another aspect of it is, we've got to look at it, especially if we're starting anything new. If you're starting a brand new business, be realistic about what you can accomplish in that first year of business. Tony Robbins said it on his I'm Not Your Guru video, but he talks about how people overestimate what they can do in one year and they underestimate what they can do in a decade. So I think it's really powerful to understand realistically where you're at, but knowing if you have to acquire 4 sales a day, you better be out there talking to 40 people or talking and building relationships with people that are talking to those 40 people. Does that make sense, Melinda?
Oh, definitely. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I love this, and it's funny. There's so much common sense here, but they're very, very important things. And I call it the super connectors or the connectors to your clients. Is that you're trying to basically looking for the complementary service providers that you can build relationship with. And that is so powerful instead of just building one-on-one relationship with your end clients, right?
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
not always a home run. I mean, like you and I have known each other a little over a year now,
Yeah.
and we're finally getting to an opportunity where I can do this on your show. You did it on my show a while back, and so it has to organically happen. So being patient with the process, putting irons in the fire every single day. If you're getting into that habit, it's amazing what ends up transforming if you are in that energy of you know meeting with people, being of service, connecting and not just limiting yourself to a few people. Go out there and make connections with people that will open you up to more opportunities.
How many years have you been in sales, or yeah, since you were in sales?
Well, I'm dating myself here, but I believe officially 21 years.
Well, I just want to share this with your audience, with the audience. I have been in sales for 16 years. You have been in sales for 21 years. And we're telling you, go connect with people, go build meaningful relationship. There's no quick win. Don't assume that you can use Facebook ads or some kind of automations and that's going to get you $1 million within a year or things like that. We've had experience and these are experience. So I'm just going to throw it out there and say, these are what we've seen over, not over the past 2 years. I mean, or not over the past 5 years, but the past 16 and 21 years is build meaningful relationships with people who are going to give you the most impact at the
Yeah,
end.
absolutely. And you bring up an interesting point about the Facebook ads because I feel like in a lot of ways, Facebook and social media, those are all like strategies that really help support the relationships you're building in person.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that you can't like have relationships that you haven't met in person. I mean, you and I have not physically hugged, or
No,
physically seen each other.
but we're done
We're seeing,
virtually.
yeah, we're seeing it today, which is powerful stuff,
Yeah.
right? Because we can build relationships with anybody in the world, and it's incredible. But let social media and digital marketing strategies support what you're doing in the trenches in your own backyard.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be, tethered to your backyard forever because, again, there's plenty of opportunity. But let social media really support your initiatives. Don't expect that you're going to sign up for, Facebook ad strategies and all of a sudden, like Melinda said, you're going to be gajillionaire overnight. It doesn't happen that way.
Mm-hmm.
I have not met a person to this day that has said that that's how it went down, who are successful, because there are plenty of people that are successful in the, internet marketing space,
Yes.
but they've worked their tail off to get to that point, and they've built relationships with people first.
Key peoples, yeah, especially the key people. I think that's also very important to note is that entrepreneurs, we don't have limited time or resources. So if you want to build relationship, be strategic and mindful of the people that are going to give you the most impact. Well, it's important to be friends with anybody, but at the same time, you still need to be very strategic in terms of the time you have. So, and I also love the fact that people should really focus on the actions they have, the conduct, the actions instead of the goals. You talked a little bit about, having that sales goals and being all stressed about sales goals. But at the end, you really should focus on the activities you're doing. And it will happen. It's like seeding the plants. It will happen. But at the beginning, there will be that period of silence where you think nobody's listening. But people are, but you're just slowly moving from their short-term memory, slowly moving to their long-term memory. But it does take time.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
and the more consistent you are with those efforts, it's like it organically happens, because you're not thinking about it. And it's not like you're on autopilot with it either. You're very thoughtful about it, but it becomes part of your fiber. It's what you're doing as part of your daily activities to succeed.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that networking. Well, it's important to set the right mindset for networking, attending these different networking events. I often find the biggest challenge with entrepreneurs is that they don't necessarily pick the best networking events to attend, and they end up spending a lot or waste a lot of time and sometimes resources attending different networking events, and eventually they start getting frustrated because they can't seem to get in front of the right decision makers. Do you see that happening at the same time?
Oh, yes. How long do we have today, girl? I'm just kidding. Yeah, I mean, that was probably like one of the, and I think I moved to the Southwest Florida area in 2005. So as we record this, it's 2016. So almost 12 years ago, I actually moved to the Southwest Florida market. I didn't have a job. I didn't have any friends. I was brand new to the area. And the sales position that I had up in Illinois, where I was originally from, was obsolete here. It didn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to work really quickly to find those influencers so I could land a job and, obviously make some friends. And I learned so much in that process. I learned what not to do. what to like, spend my time on, what to think about in terms of like having artful conversations with people. So I think what's interesting is that I totally agree that the first core organizations I think anybody should probably be thinking about would be obviously perhaps maybe your chamber of commerce, some sort of civic organization, or a civic organization like a Rotary or like a Kiwanis Club, something
Yeah.
along those lines, and then a nonprofit organization. And people look at me sometimes like I'm a crazy woman when I say nonprofits,
Mm-hmm.
but nonprofit organizations have very influential people on their boards.
Yeah.
So it's a great way to not only get behind a cause or an organization that you're passionate about, but you also start meeting some influential people in the community. So those are really great opportunities to know, like, kind of the who's who, because typical board member is going to be the CEO of a company. They're going to be like in a leadership role. They might be the sales professional, but if they are, look, they probably are, they're on the up and coming, because like most like, like if you think about like the entry level position, they're not necessarily thinking about being on a board of an organization. They're not
No.
at that level yet of development. So I think that those are good places to be. And of course, you could always look at your trade. I always think about, like, for instance, there's like the attorneys have a bar association.
Yeah.
Well, not everybody that's a part of that organization is necessarily an attorney. They might be affiliates, so they might be CPAs or financial planners or other coaches like like us. They might be supporting assets to that organization. So trade organization's really good. I like chambers. Some people really look at me like I'm crazy when I say chambers because it's so ambiguous, and not every chamber organization is the right fit. But these are just some ideas that you can try on for size. And most event organizations will let you go to at least 2 events prior to them asking you if you're going to join the organization officially.
Mm-hmm.
The final thing I have about networking on this question is that not every networking event is the same. So you definitely want to make sure you're checking out the energy, and don't assume that if you go once that you're going to like never have to go back again. If you really want to make the most out of those relationships you're building, you'll want to go consistently. If they meet once a month, make sure you're there once a month. If they meet once a week, make sure you're there once a week. Play along, be part of that energy, so you can build that rapport quicker and more efficiently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree with you that you have to check out and make sure that you're I would say picky about it, because there are a lot of events that you have to go to. So prioritize them, look at a list of events and tell yourself, if I could just attend and really build close relationship with these people, it takes time. Which ones can I do? Can I just, realistically, maybe I could only manage 4 or 5 organizations or events rather than going to 10 or 20 of those, because that would just be impossible. So be very picky. And especially for entrepreneurs, when we have limited time and resources, we don't want to just spend all our time and energy networking and not building real relationship. Because at the end, it's about building those meaningful relationship. Quality always trumps quantity.
Yeah, absolutely. And right away. I mean, I think that like I'm a pretty intuitive person, but I know right away like if like there's, and I think that's why I suggest going to an event at least twice,
Yeah.
because you might find, I mean, walked into an event one time and I was like, oh my goodness, everybody here is awesome and it's great. And I went back the following week and
Yeah.
everybody, like, it was like I walked into the land of zombies. So if I would
Oh,
have made the decision
wow.
to like jump into that organization right away, I would have been very disappointed because I didn't go back. Like if I would have done that and not gone back twice. So I think going twice, it does help, but understand where you fit in, and why it's important for you before you make those decisions. You don't want to join a lot of different things. You'll be overwhelmed really quickly. I
Hmm.
know, because I was one of those people that did it for many years.
In terms of, I mean, you've done a lot of networking events and you've probably seen people doing it with great impact, and you probably have seen a lot of mistakes. And I'm always trying to see, trying to study other people's success. So do you have, can you share with us some great tips or strategies you've seen over the years in terms of networking? and building meaningful relationships?
Thank you for that question. I think the number one thing I could suggest is when you're out there doing it, period, when you're going to networking events, be sure to follow up.
Oh, yeah.
That is one thing that like gets left on the table every single time. They go to an event, they meet some incredible people, and then the business card sits on the desk. That connection never gets like, there's never the next step. So one of the things that one of the tips that I can share with our peeps today that would really help eliminate some of that business cards, like those business cards piling up, is, a lot of professionals are on LinkedIn. Make a point to connect on LinkedIn right then and there. So everybody's like, in this day and age, a lot of people have their smartphones. You might have that person that doesn't, but most people have their smartphones. Make it a point to connect with that person on LinkedIn right away. Again, go back the next day, the very next day. The first thing you do is circle back with that person. In the simplest form, hey, it was great meeting you last night. I'd love to reconnect and learn more about your current areas of focus and how I can support you. That can all be done in a quick either LinkedIn message or an email, but it doesn't mean you have to necessarily go to coffee with these people. You can certainly hop on a quick call, whether it's Skype or on the phone, and understand in a few moments what their current areas of focus are and how you can help connect the dots. I let that process like on the phone last about 20 minutes. I don't spend a lot of time on it up front because everybody's time is valuable.
Yeah.
I want to get to the point, but I do want to understand what their position is so I can quickly get them the resources that they need. And I always preface that phone call with, look, I want to be respectful of your time. I've budgeted 20 minutes for this call. Does that still work for you? And it sets the stage. So it lets them know that there's a short amount of time. We're going to get to the chase, but we're also here to learn about one another and figure out how we can continue the conversation. So it's very heartful, but it's
respectful.
Very respectful. And it does get to the point, but it does allow you to build that relationship efficiently, but also very artfully and thoughtfully as well, too.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, our time is limited. And a lot of times I do see a lot of entrepreneurs at the beginning, we figure we have to build meaningful relationships. So that means that we have to go for coffee with everybody. And turns out that we never get our things done. Nothing gets done because we just end up doing lots of coffee dates. And
And it's frustrating for a lot of people because I think it's probably one of those byproducts of networking gone wrong, right? Because
exactly.
like, oh gosh, this is what this means. But if we can just say, hey, if you're at the event, are you on LinkedIn? Yes, me too. Okay, great. I'm going to send you a message and, we'll circle back and you take the lead with it. You understand, that your time is valuable, but you want to respect their time as well.
And any other mistakes that you often see people making?
So I guess that goes back to my dating scenario that I mentioned earlier. One of my pet peeves, and I don't like to harp on it so much, but is that whole element of throwing a business card in somebody's face without even saying hello. That to me, indicates that you are so green, not you specifically, but generally, that you're very green and that you're probably not thinking about me. And honestly, I'm in a position where I'm really always trying to put the focus on the other person, but I want that same consideration as well. So that's generally an opportunity for me to open up the door and maybe, say to them, politely, of course, that's probably not the best introduction. It probably puts you, I know you didn't mean it, but so that element of getting that business card out in front of people right away. Always ask if you can give your business card. So you might be striking up a conversation with somebody and you're building a great rapport and you want to move it on to another person. If you really do want to build a relationship with that person, say, is it okay if we connect on LinkedIn? Is it okay if I give you my card? Ask for that permission before assuming that yes, this is okay. And then of course, wait for that person to say yes. Or if they say no, honor that as well too. So that's one other thing. And also being late to an event. I'm noticing a lot of this. I don't know if you're noticing this, Melinda, with some of the things that you do, but it's really interesting to me that when things start at 8 o'clock, Don't get there at 7:30. That doesn't make any sense because that
No.
sounds really nice for the host, who's trying to get things set up. But don't go strolling in at 8:30.
No.
Be there on time. It's counterintuitive if you show up later. Again, if you're showing up on time, a lot of other people are going to get there later. It allows you to connect with people that are also on time, who are respectful of deadlines. I pick up a lot on nonverbal clues. So if you're going to, if the event starts at 8 o'clock in the morning, do your best to be there at 8 o'clock in the morning. Don't get there too early, but definitely don't get there too late. You'll have the upper advantage to connect with like-minded people when you show up on time at those events.
Oh yeah, I think that's a great point. And by the way, I mean you've already invested time and resources to attend those events. So why would you want to attend? Why would you want to arrive a bit later? There's so much we could cover, but I still want to cover one very important thing that a lot of entrepreneurs wonder: the unique value proposition or the elevator speech, whatever, or whatever the one-liner that described what you do. Do you believe in that, or are you the kind of person that kind of takes it more as a different approach? Can you share something? Yeah, share this with us.
Yeah, perfect. I like this question. I'll harken back to something that Michael Port says. He's on a mission to abolish the elevator pitch.
I think so too. Okay.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So, and I have to agree with him on some level. I think that in the intentional pitch, and I'm really kind of paraphrasing his words, but thinking about, that pitching aspect, it was really intended for, and people that were trying to pitch products to investors, and that's where that all harkens from, right? But I think today, I am more interested in knowing who you are, but from a place of what problem do you solve? So, and I'll throw another person into this mix too, into this conversation. But Simon Sinek talking about, start with why, understanding why you do what you do. Okay, but why do you do what you do? For a benefit to that other person that's listening to every word that's coming out of your mouth. If you were only saying it from your perspective and you're not adding any value to the person that's listening to your quote unquote pitch, it'll fall on deaf ears. So if you're always thoughtful about the other person and what they need to hear, and I think that's why the unique USP or the unique selling proposition, that pitch is really more about understanding, well, this is what I do, but I'm more interested in what is it that I can provide value to you with? I mean, what are your biggest solutions at the moment? And it's not necessarily going to be like something that you discover in a networking event. You might have to have another conversation with that person before they're open to opening up about their challenges or opening up to other people, that they might know. Maybe they've got some referrals or leads for you. But if we can start talking about what problems we solve, that's the conversation I'm more interested in, and I want to build that rapport with people, but I don't necessarily want to know, oh, you're a business coach. Okay, well, great. Yeah, so am I.
Yeah.
Well, no, we're different. So we're very different. And this is why I'm different. How are you different? And those are the conversations I'm more interested in having.
Yeah, that is so true, because it's simply unrealistic to believe that with that one single sentence or that one single statement, you're going to build that, all the no like trust factor with your prospective clients. It is simply not realistic. And it puts a lot of pressure on that person delivering the statement, thinking that, wow, this is my pitch. It's coming. I'm going to say it. And you always end up stumbling a little bit and sounding weird and pushy. So I totally agree with you. At the end, it's a conversation, just like dating. It's that getting the feedback and the give and take and push and pull. So.
Exactly. And really it's just getting down to the point of having an engaging conversation. Because if you were to say that you were a sales coach, or if I were to say I'm a business coach, it's not as compelling as I help people communicate with clarity. Like that's a little more compelling than, oh, I'm a business coach. Because that could go any direction. Right away, that automatically discounts a lot of people in their mind. They say, oh, I don't need that. But if they need help with communicating with clarity or communicating with confidence, yeah, they can get behind that, so it just opens up the door for some more questions from that other person.
That is amazing. See, I told you I got lots of questions for you. Didn't I?
I'm excited. This is great. I love the conversation that we're having today. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, these are all very important questions a lot of people have, especially when it comes to networking. If people want to know more about you and what you do, how should they contact you?
Oh, thank you for that. So everything that I've got going on is over at thequeenofresults.com. That's a great way to kind of pull some free resources for our lovely audience today who's listening or watching. So there's tons of free resources right there on that page, thequeenofresults.com.
And what kind of resource, which resource are you most passionate about? Let us know.
Yeah, I think the biggest resource that I'm most passionate about right now is my connection tip guide. So this is a great tip guide that for anybody that's actually trying to figure out, well, what are some of the things that they either want to say in the business context? Maybe they're stumbling through networking tips on how to communicate at networking events without sounding so awkward, or perhaps maybe they just really don't know how to pivot the sales conversation. Maybe there's a lull. So there's some information within that guide that's going to really help give people just some ideas to maybe jumpstart those conversations in a more artful way without sounding so pitchy or sound so uncomfortable.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Yeah, because I think that's always what people are trying to figure out, how to sell, but without sounding too salesy, too pushy. Well, thank you very much, Erica. So hopefully next time we'll have a chance to invite you back again. We can talk more about this.
Yes, well, I'd love that. Thank you so much for having me on, Melinda. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.